So let's take a look at editing a blog post now. Here we are on the home page. If we click on one of our blog posts, it takes us to the view page for that blog post, and now we have an edit link. We can click that and it takes us to the same looking form that we used to create the blog post in the first place. So let's make a change to the title. This is the title and the body, and then we'll save that. And now it takes us back to the view page again. We can see that our changes took place. We have a new title and our body has been updated. So let's take a look at the behind the scenes magic. So here are the two routes that handle editing a blog post. The first route here on line 47 is the route that renders the view. And as you can see on line 48 here, we're reusing our create.jade view. Since a blog post has the same properties when we're editing versus creating, we'll just reuse that, and we added a little logic in there to check to see if a post was passed along when rendering. Another thing to note here is that we are passing the return value of blog post.findById directly into the template rendering engine. Normally, this wouldn't work at all, but thanks to the use of a new module we're using now called Express-Mongoose, we can do that. And what Express-Mongoose does is bootstraps Express so that it can handle a Mongoose query or Mongoose promise, and the view rendering engine will just wait until those queries return. And if any of the queries that you pass into the rendering engine return an error, the error is passed to the next function. So our already defined error handling logic will be called, and everything just works as you would expect it to be. So if you're curious, let's take a look at how Express-Mongoose is set up. So here is our app.js file, and all we've done to utilize the Express-Mongoose functionality is simply require the module. As long as you npm install Express-Mongoose, you can just require it and it will automatically be wired up for you and ready to go. Alright, so we're back looking at our routes that handle editing a blog post, and what we want to do now is take a look at the template that we made some changes to here. Now we're passing a blog post and we need to be able to render the details of a blog post. So what we did in create.jade here is just set up a few different variables. One is an action, and we check to see if a post was passed to the template. And same for title and body. We just check first to see if a post was passed, and then we set some values appropriately. So if a blog post was passed, we set the form action to the edit URL. Otherwise, we want to create a post. And then down here in our template, we just pass those values so that the inputs are filled with the current values, or an empty string if no post was sent at all. Once the edit form is submitted, we need to handle those values. And so what we're going to do here is pass the request that we received from Express directly into a new method on our blog post model called edit. Normally this method does not exist, but it's custom functionality that we defined within our schema. So let's take a look at how you can go about defining your own custom model functionality in your schemas. So here we are in our schema that we have defined, and what we want to take a look at is this new static method we added. And we can do that by adding a property onto the statics object which lives on a schema. So we named the function edit, and it receives that request object and a callback. So in here is where we're going to perform all of our business logic. Normally, maybe this isn't a great use case, but the purpose of this is just to show that you guys can define your own functionality and extend models through your schemas. So what do we need to do? Well, we grab the ID from the request, we get the current logged in user, and we need to validate that the current user is actually the same author of the blog post. So we're going to define some query parameters that has both the underscore ID and the author defined. And then we also need to set up some update parameters. So we want to set the title to the title that was passed in the request, body to the body that was passed in the request, and then we're going to call this.update. And within a static function, this refers to the model itself. So we can call model.update in here. We pass our query and update, And what we want to check for is if an error occurred, we can just pass that to the callback. And we also are going to look to see if there were any affected documents. And if there weren't any, that means our query didn't match anything. And what that likely means is that the author didn't match. Or it could mean that the ID just doesn't exist anymore. Somehow it got deleted in between the time that the request was made for the update and the delete happened. But anyway, if that occurs, we can pass back an error to the callback. Otherwise, we're okay, and we just execute the callback directly. So if we bounce back to our route, we can see that indeed we just check for an error, and we pass that to next so that our existing error handling mechanism kicks in. Otherwise, we can redirect them to the view page again, where they'll see their changes.